For more on the 2020 race, I want to bring on Anthony Leonardi, a breaking news reporter for the Washington Examiner. So, Anthony, over the past week, we have seen this CNN clip of Larry King's show surface regarding Tara Reade's mother voicing some complaints about Joe Biden's staff. That's what at least the allegation first prompted by The Intercept said. And now we hear today that a former neighbor is now coming forward and corroborating some of those claims from the early 1990s. Is this subject becoming a little less taboo to talk about?
Certainly. I mean, you even saw CNN withhold their own reporting of the situation with the Larry King episode that you saw recently reported by The Intercept and then reported later by other outlets. So they were withholding their report, but then the New York Times did their own analysis on former Vice President Joe Biden's behavior. So then finally, when the clip came out with that you saw recently, CNN released the report. So it's becoming more inevitable that this will be in the mainstream dialogue, and that former Vice President Joe Biden is going to have to address the situation just as he did earlier with other women that came out to say that they felt uncomfortable by the way that he just simply communicated with them, getting too close, and how he interacted with them. So it seems inevitable at this point.
And this comes as Joe Biden has become the presumptive Democratic nominee. He hasn't necessarily got the convention and got the official nomination just yet, but he's pulled away. Senator Bernie Sanders suspended his campaign. All the other candidates are out, so everybody's assuming that it is going to be Joe Biden. In fact, we just saw today House Speaker Nancy Pelosi endorse Joe Biden. Is this an issue that maybe voters just don't care about? Is that necessarily why some of these people are still throwing their support behind Biden, whereas in the past this would have almost been a disqualifying type of accusation?
Some may not be, such as Alyssa Milano, who you saw the activist, and she was very active during Brett Kavanaugh's confirmation hearings. But she has decided that in this case, that same standard does not apply. But you are seeing massive amounts of Bernie Sanders supporters saying that this is hypocritical of the way that Brett Kavanaugh was treated in the case of Tara Reade. So they are saying that this needs to be investigated. They are, echoing those sentiments that they did in 2018 about believing women. And eventually it's going to come to a head about Joe Biden being asked about this point blank by media, and he's going to have an answer for that given everything that's been reported.
And we even hear now with Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who had first said that Tara Reade's accusations should be taken legitimately, that they should be brought up. She's still throwing her support behind Joe Biden. And you bring up Alyssa Milano, too. She was a big voice in the Me Too movement. A lot of our viewers may remember her literally sitting behind Brett Kavanaugh at those hearings. That's when she, I guess, first came to prominence. I guess she's an actress. I never saw much of her stuff. I don't know. But what does it say about the Me Too movement? Because then we also see the Women's March, for example. That's not the same organization that it used to be. It was the leadership was forced to step down at different parts as well due to anti-Semitism allegations, actually. But is the Me Too movement going away?
It's not so much that it's going away, rather it's just on the back burner as it is right now. Right now we're dealing with a potential Great Depression going forward and a pandemic. So the public is focused mainly on their lives returning back to normal, then when they're going to be able to go to their jobs again, when they're going to be able to shop and take care of their family as they normally would. So those are the pressing issues that American voters are facing today, and it's reflecting in polls how 8 in 10 Americans want or feel that it's necessary for states to continue their quarantines. High on that list is not the Me Too movement as it stands.
Mm-hmm. And, I want to be transparent about this, too, because we've been a little bit hesitant to cover the Tara Reade allegations on this show in the past. Whenever we have, it would be, for example, if the New York Times was coming out and finally covering it, if CNN, for example, first covered it over the weekend. But it's one of those hard subjects where you kind of need to have more information in order to cover it because, for example, you and I can make an accusation right now, and I don't expect CNN to cover that. It is a very complicated situation. And I think now that we're seeing more evidence come to light, more corroborating evidence, it becomes appropriate and I would say necessary for some of these outlets to cover exactly what we're talking about right now. But you also bring up the idea that this isn't on the forefront of a lot of voters' minds. It's the pandemic at the very moment, followed by the economy. How do those two things play into the Biden's campaign moving forward?
Right now, Biden has to be incredibly cautious of how he approaches the campaign going forward because, as I've said previously, you don't want to be the candidate that's politicizing an issue. And this is also the case with Democrats who are suggesting that New York Governor Andrew Cuomo should run for president, given his leadership in the coronavirus pandemic. Well, if he decided to run, conservative commentators have often said that's the ultimate example of politicizing a crisis in the moment. And so Biden needs to be careful about, he needs to also send a message to voters, Democratic voters and independents, that we are on the same ship. We're needing to guide it in the same direction as President Trump wants to, ideally. So he has to be careful going forward in the message that he communicates to voters, so he doesn't look like he's also politicizing a pandemic.
And now we also see progressives and Senator Bernie Sanders saying that he wants to stay on the ballot and for people to vote for him just in case something is pulled at that convention, whether or not that they use these allegations to remove Biden, whether it's something else. They want to make sure that he's the man on that ballot with the remaining amount of delegates. So I think it's interesting to see, as we move forward, a little bit more uncertainty come out of this nominating process. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out between now and the convention. But Anthony Leonardi, always a pleasure having you on. Thank you.